Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, and share buttons. Well, everything changes on October 1st. When we look back, when the world looks back 2-3 years from now, I believe they will see October 1st and the month of October as the day, the time when the global depression really kicked into high gear. Why do I say that? Well, we've talked about this some in the past. Today, we're going to look at the reality of what's happening on the ground. We're going to look at several real stories of people who are impacted by what's changing October 1st. So what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the resumption of student loan payments in the United States. So as many of you know, following the pandemic, we had a student loan moratorium instituted in the United States that allowed people who had student loans to no longer have to make those payments. There were no penalties, no interest accrued if you simply didn't make those payments for the last 3.5 years. Needless to say, this created a big boost for the economy because there were 40 million plus borrowers who owed an average of $400 a month to $500 a month, depending on which news source you cite, who all of a sudden had that disposable income to spend on something else other than paying back their student loans. So this helped contribute to inflation. But now that moratorium is coming to an end, and it's going to have a huge impact on the economy. Now, most people would say, well, what's the big deal? People were paying these before the pandemic. Why all of a sudden is going to cause problems when they can't now? Well, there's several reasons. One is, let's say you were living paycheck to paycheck prior to the moratorium. Now, if your income has not gone up with inflation, inflation has taken a bite out of the ability to make those payments because the cost of everything else has gone up. You also have people who bought into the idea that the government was going to somehow forgive all these student loans. They were made promises by the incoming Biden administration. All student loans will be forgiven, or $10,000, $20,000 or more of student loans would be forgiven, even though Nancy Pelosi, who's no right-wing conservative, said that that plan was unconstitutional, that it wouldn't pass muster with the Supreme Court. Many people believe that. So, and it makes sense. Why would you, if there's no penalties for not making that payment, why wouldn't you delay and see if they forgave that debt? You would otherwise be foolish for paying it off if they were just going to forgive it. So many people held off on that and, of course, made other decisions on how to spend that money thinking those payments would never come back. And now reality is coming home. So I want to take a look at this article right here. This is from Zero Hedge. It's from back in August 17th. It says student loan payments to exceed mortgage for some borrowers. I want to read through this because it's got some interesting stories that help give a real-world portrayal of what's happening on the ground so that we're not just citing all these numbers. We're looking at real impact on people's lives and, more importantly, on their spending in an economy, the world's #1 economy that is driven by consumer spending. And when that slows down, the whole world slows down. So this says, thanks to people locking in historically low mortgage rates during the pandemic, many U.S. borrowers will pay more on their student loans than their mortgage after a 3-year pandemic-era student loan pause ends next month. 28-year-old Kentucky physical therapist Fikret Sabik, for example, will have to start making loan payments of $1,130 per month to satisfy the student loan obligation. This is nearly $300 more than he and his wife Amina are paying on their mortgage. In total, Sabik is carrying around $94,000 in student debt from his undergraduate biology degree and doctorate of physical therapy, both from Western Kentucky University. The pandemic pause on student loan payments helped the couple buy a home in 2020. Now, the pause didn't do that. The pause freed up that income temporarily, and they used it to buy this home. So we'll see some commentary from Zero Hedge in here as we go on, but it says for $207,000 with a 3.25% interest rate, less than half what borrowing costs are now. Sabic knew debt payments would restart at some point, and he and Amina have been preparing their budget, but they still expect it to be difficult. And that's the thing, even if they can make the payment, those funds are going, they're not going to something else in the economy, whether it's eating out or some new products or services they might buy. And so this is going to have a huge impact on spending. He says it really does slow down a lot of your life decisions when you have such a big burden monthly to have to pay, said Sabic, who agreed to said burden and then bought a house. That said, borrowers can be cut a little slack when factoring in crippling inflation, which we mentioned before. As Americans face the resumption of student loan payments, many will be cutting back on spending to make ends meet. Experts are predicting a wave of delinquencies hitting credit card, auto loans, and student debt payments as people struggle to make ends meet. And in another article I read, 1 in 13 borrowers is already delinquent on another type of debt payment. So no doubt this is going to have a huge impact on consumer spending. The article says while the average student loan payment before the pandemic was about $400, 1 in 5 borrowers will be paying more than $500 a month. Almost 7% of debt holders face bills of $1,000 or more. Now, to put that in perspective, there's, I believe, 42 million student loan borrowers. Now, all of those people won't have to start making payments because some of them are students, some of them are already in default, some of them have a forbearance for another reason. But from what I understand, about 30 million borrowers will have to start making those payments. So if 7% face bills of $1,000 or more per month, that comes out to over 2 million people paying an extra $1,000 a month that hasn't been in their budget for the last 3.5 years. You don't think that's going to have an impact on the economy? It most certainly will. It says, at the same time, about 23.7 million homes in the U.S. have a mortgage payment of $1,000 or less. In Bloomberg's second example, Lexington, South Carolina attorney Chase Keebler and his wife Laura face $2,100 per month in student loan payments next month versus just $1,850 for their mortgage. Chase has $75,000 in federal debt, which he used to obtain an undergraduate degree in English from Indiana University of Pennsylvania and his law degree from the University of South Carolina. Laura has around $70,000 worth of debt, which is a mixture of public and private debt. In July 2020, the couple paid $346,000 and locked in a 3.2% mortgage rate. Now they say the addition of their student loan obligations feels daunting, especially now that they've got 2 children under the age of 2, and Laura is now a stay-at-home mom. So guys, we look at the choices people have made. They had to have known these payments were coming again one day. But then again, many people assumed that these debts that they voluntarily took on would simply be forgiven, that they would go away. They tried to push it off to another day. I'll deal with that when the time comes. Well, the time has come, guys. And so people are going to be, really pulling the purse strings tight. They're going to be making tighter and tighter budgets, which is happening already with inflation. So this is just going to have an outsized impact on the economy, and it's going to be a shock to the economy when this happens all at once. He says, I expected to have law school debt, but it's an incredible amount of money that is guaranteed out of every month for the foreseeable future, said Keebler, who also, and again, this is Zero Hedge's commentary, and I'm not saying I disagree with it. He says, also signed on the dotted line and then bought a house and had 2 kids and agreed that his wife would leave the workforce to raise their children. So this is all the result of the decisions they've made. And it says more than rent, too. It's not just homeowners. Renters are about to feel the pain, too. Bloomberg highlights the plight of one Molly McGee, a 28-year-old novelist living in New York whose student loan bill will exceed her rent. The 28-year-old novelist has $120,000 in public and private loans from her undergraduate degree at Champlain College in Vermont and her Master of Fine Arts in Writing at Columbia, where she also works as an adjunct professor. She will soon pay $1,270 a month on her debt. That's more than her $1,100 share of the $2,500 rent for an apartment in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, where she lives with her partner. McGee said she needed to get an MFA to be taken seriously in her field, but her paychecks haven't made up for that investment. She and her partner are putting off goals like getting married because of the loans. I'm finding myself at a juncture where I'm really considering having to move back home to Tennessee and get an office job somewhere where the cost of living is way less, she said. What's wrong with that? But it says, who could imagine that taking on $120,000 of debt wouldn't be tenable on a budding novelist salary in New York City? Again, these are decisions that people have made, but those decisions, whether you agree with them or not, will have a tremendous impact on the overall economy, because people are going to be forced to make decisions different from what they have been making for the last 3.5 years. And they're going to be redirecting spending away from things in the economy. And no matter what they're doing, whether they were saving that cash in a bank account for a rainy day, or whether they were using it to go out to eat with friends or to go play golf or buy a new car, whatever those funds were used for, they now have to be redirected toward paying student loans. And so you're looking at somewhere between $12 and $15 billion per month taken out of discretionary spending. And guys, that's going to have an enormous impact on the economy, along with everything else that's been going on that we've been talking about. I believe this is what is just going to push the entire global economy over the edge. And it's not just young people, as we read in this story. We just read in the Zero Hedge story, but let's look at this story as well. This is from CNBC. It says, as federal student loan payments restart, some older borrowers' Social Security benefits may be at risk. Now, when you see that, you might think, well, what does student loans have to do with Social Security paying out benefits? Well, it only matters if you're on Social Security and still have unpaid student loan debt, which millions of people do. So let's read on. It says, older federal student loan debtors who fall behind on payments may be at risk of having their Social Security checks garnished. It says a bill has been reintroduced in Congress that seeks to protect Social Security benefits from being reduced in those circumstances. So do you notice the problem, the reoccurring news that we see here is the government creates a problem. The government comes up with a solution, a little Band-Aid solution to try to temporarily fix the problem, which causes other problems, which they then try to create new programs and new legislation to try to fix, and this keeps going on and on and on. If they would just butt out, everything would probably go smoothly. But it says, federal student loan repayment set to restart in October following a pandemic hiatus that has been in place since March 2020. Millions of Americans will be on the hook to make monthly payments on those debts, including some Social Security beneficiaries. But if those debtors fall behind on their federal student loans, that may eventually put a portion of the income they receive from Social Security benefits at risk. However, new protections put in place under President Biden as payments restart will delay any garnishments from happening. The earliest I can see someone getting their Social Security garnished would be late fall of 2024, said Betsy Mayotte, president and founder of the Institute of Student Loan Advisors. Now, again, she says, don't worry about it. It won't be, your Social Security won't be garnished until, after the election. That's how we set it up so that people won't be enraged. But guys, keep in mind, if you aren't making those payments, the interest it's accruing. Okay? So these things don't go away just because people don't pay them. So the payments don't just go away simply because people don't pay them. The interest continues to accrue. They build, the debt snowballs between now and late 2024. So guys, this, they talk about, oh, well, don't worry about it. Well, if that impacts you, that's a big deal. So all across the board, millions of people are getting hit with these payments. Many people thought they would go away. They did not. They made decisions based on that. Bad decisions, it looks like. Some people have just been squeezed by inflation. They've made the best decisions that they thought possible at the time, but then inflation has come along and squeezed any of that student loan debt that they weren't paying back has all been taken up to pay for food and rent and other necessities. So guys, this is going to have a huge impact on the economy. And this is happening at a time where we've talked about so many other issues are hitting the economy. If this was the only one, it may not be that big of a deal. It might cause a slight impact, but this is going to have a huge impact. Keep in mind, when people divert their spending from discretionary spending in the economy, where it has this multiplier effect, you go to the grocery store and you spend that money, then the grocery store turns around and buys more inventory from their suppliers, and this money filters throughout the economy. When you pay back a student loan, that's extinguishing a debt. It's basically decreasing the currency supply in doing that. And we've talked about how the currency supply has gone negative in a way that it has not since the Great Depression. So this exacerbates the problem. We live in an economy, we operate in an economy that is dependent on an ever-increasing debt load coming along and increasing the currency supply. And so when debt is paid back in mass like this, the paying back of debt decreases the currency supply. And that's at a time when we're not seeing new loans being made. We're seeing lending standards tighten. We're seeing people's ability to take on new credit go down. We're seeing banks and their willingness to make credit go down. We've addressed this in past videos. We see commercial real estate on the verge of an absolute implosion. We see residential real estate with home sales dropping, mortgage applications dropping to their lowest in over almost 3 decades, when the population was much smaller than it is now. We're seeing auto loan and credit card delinquencies at highs we haven't seen since the great financial crisis. So we're seeing all of this. We're seeing China having an implosion of its real estate sector. We're seeing their imports decrease, their exports decrease. We're seeing whole factories shut down, the deindustrialization of Europe going on right now. So all over the world, the global economy is grinding to a halt. And we had a massive banking crisis in the United States just 6 months ago. We had the second, third, and fourth largest bank failures in U.S. history. They came out with a special program, slapped a Band-Aid on the problem, and it seemed to go away. It disappeared from the news headlines. But my guess is that it's going to crop back up very soon, before this year is over. And this is one of the reasons, this resumption of student loan payments It's going to take an immediate impact. It's going to have an immediate impact on consumer spending. And what happens when consumer spending dries up in a lot of these areas, like eating out? Well, now the restaurant doesn't need as many staff members, and so they let those staff members go. And then they tighten up on how much they're spending, and it just has this contagion effect, almost this domino effect. As people get laid off, they tighten their budgets, they don't spend as much, which causes this ripple effect through the economy. And that is where we're headed, guys. We're headed into a massive depression. I believe we are already in one. It just hasn't become apparent and noticeable to the mainstream corporate media and all of the wealthy politicians who want to look the other way. But real people on the ground understand what I'm talking about. We are already in the midst of this. Unfortunately, it's going to get worse. Now, what does all this have to do with Bible prophecy? I believe it sets the stage for the rise of a demagogue, maybe one like the Antichrist, to rise to power. It sets the stage for the government to come to the rescue with central bank digital currencies, which we know they want to roll out all over the world. And what better way to do that than to put people in a position where they can't pay their rent, where they can't afford groceries, and say, well, we have these stimmy checks for you. We'll give you this universal basic income, but in order to receive it, you're going to have to get this digital wallet, and you will receive it in the form of central bank digital currency. And guys, then they will have us all locked into this cage. It's an ultimate form of control. And I believe all of this is putting the infrastructure in place and setting the table for the rollout of the Mark of the Beast system at the midpoint of the tribulation period. The Mark of the Beast is not here. We're not in the tribulation right now. But previous generations couldn't imagine the Mark of the Beast system outside of the supernatural coming into being. We're seeing, our generation is unique in that we're seeing these things being put into place right now. So guys, that tells me we're getting ever closer to that tribulation period, which means Jesus could return at any moment. So make sure you are living your life for Jesus right now. All the rest of this stuff is going to fade away. The wealth in your bank account, your stock market portfolio, all of that's going to come to nothing, regardless of whether there's a global depression. Eventually, it's going to come to nothing. What matters is your relationship with Jesus Christ and those around you. So guys, make sure that you know who Jesus is, that he is your Lord and Savior, because that's the most important thing you can do to prepare for what is coming, because I believe this global depression that we're in right now, which is going to get worse, guys, it's going to be as bad as the Great Depression that we've all read about and watched documentaries about. It won't be as long, but it's going to be tumultuous, because on the other side of that, they're going to be handing out this universal basic income. And so on the other side, several years down the road, we're going to have hyperinflation. We're going to have a collapse of all the fiat currencies in the world. And then we have a real mess. So let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. Do you have these student loan payments? Is this directly impacting you or one of your family members? What do you think all of this means? Is it no big deal? Let me know what you think. But leave your comments below. Make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. And God willing, I will see you on Wednesday. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.